My stepson called me a temporary tenant, so I sold the house, packed up, and vanished. Now he's the one living temporarily, in a rental with his real dad. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. My name is Andrew. I used to believe patience could melt resentment, that love could be earned, that a man who shows up every day could take root in the lives of children he didn't father. That sacrifice, quiet, constant, uncelebrated, would mean something in the end. I believed that a home could be built not from bricks and beams, but from consistency. I believed that if I gave enough, stayed long enough, forgave enough, they'd eventually look at me and see a father. I was wrong. 3 years ago, I married Melissa, a soft-spoken woman with warm hands and eyes that smiled before her lips did. Her grief had a shape, though she never named it. I thought I could help carry it. I thought I could give her a second life, a stronger one. We merged families. I brought 2 children, Jake, 10, and Lily, 8. Kind-hearted kids who still believed in bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes. They needed a mother. Melissa was good to them. She brought Ryan, 16, and Haley, 14. Teenagers, older, sharper around the edges. They'd already been through the storm of their parents' divorce and made it out with scars shaped like their father. Greg, he lived 10 minutes away, wore charm like cologne, showed up just often enough to keep the title intact. Holidays, birthdays, a few game nights. He never missed the photo ops, but somehow always missed the bills, the late-night fevers, the parent-teacher conferences where words like discipline and structure floated like warnings. That was my job. I was the one who adjusted the thermostat in the middle of the night, who picked up Ryan from football practice when Greg was tied up again. I was the one who replaced Haley's cracked phone screen without a word, who refilled the pantry, who fixed the broken hinges on their bedroom doors. I stood in the gaps their father left behind. I did it willingly, not because I had to, but because I thought it meant something. We moved into a house in the suburbs of Dalton. 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 down, a wraparound porch, enough yard to mow, enough rooms to get lost in. Melissa called it a fresh start. I called it home. We painted the walls together, picked out furniture, argued over rugs. We hung photos in the hallway, one for each kid, taken at the beach the previous summer. The frames didn't match. I didn't care. I told myself we were building something that didn't need to be perfect to be real. First, everything felt light. Dinners around the table. Movie nights with popcorn and blankets. Haley laughed. Jake and Lily adjusted fast. They were young, eager to belong. I tucked them in every night. Lily asked Melissa if she could call her Mom. Melissa cried when she told me. But Ryan stayed quiet. He'd disappear into his room after school, headphones in, door shut. When Melissa asked him to come down for dinner, he'd listen. When I asked, nothing. If I reminded him to take the trash out, he'd shrug. If I asked him to help Jake with his homework, he'd mutter, "Why don't you do it? He's your kid." I told myself it was normal. Teenagers are supposed to push back, especially boys, especially when their mother marries someone new. I tried not to take it personally, but then came the little cuts, the smirks, the deliberate messes left for me to clean. The way he'd roll his eyes when I spoke, even if it was just to ask about his day. He wouldn't say no. He'd just ignore me, like I wasn't even in the room. Melissa saw it. I know she did, but her way of handling it was silence. Or worse, excuses. He's just adjusting. He misses his dad. Don't push him too hard. So I didn't push. I tried patience instead. I drove him to school, waited outside his practices, cheered from the bleachers even when he barely acknowledged I was there. I bought the snacks he liked, learned the name of his favorite band, tried to start conversations in the car, though he always answered with monosyllables. "You doing okay?" "Yeah." "How's chemistry going?" "It's fine." "Need help studying?" "No." I told myself it was just a phase, that if I kept showing up, if I kept loving them all without conditions, eventually he'd let me in. Eventually he'd see the difference between a father who drops in and one who stays. But time passed. 1 month became 3, then a year, then 2. The silence never changed. The walls never came down. If anything, they grew thicker. Haley at least tried. She wasn't warm, but she was polite. Sometimes she'd ask for help with her essays or laugh at something I said at dinner. She never called me Dad. But she didn't treat me like a stranger either. With Ryan, it was different. One night, we were setting the table for dinner. I handed him a stack of plates and asked him to help. He didn't move. Melissa walked in, saw us standing there, and said, "Come on, Ryan, just give Andrew a hand." He grabbed the plates and muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "I don't take orders from strangers." I didn't react. Not out loud. I swallowed it. Told myself it wasn't worth a fight in front of the others. Jake and Lily were watching. Later that night, Melissa apologized, quietly, behind our bedroom door. "He didn't mean it like that," she whispered. I nodded. But the thing is, he did. He meant it exactly like that. A few weeks later, I came home late from work and overheard Ryan on the phone in the kitchen. He was laughing, carefree in a way I'd never seen around me. "Yeah, he still thinks he runs the place," he said. "But he's just a temporary tenant." That line didn't make me angry. Clarified everything. That's exactly how he saw me. Not as a father. Not even as an adult. Just a placeholder. A guy filling space until something better came along. A man who bought groceries and changed the oil and paid the mortgage, but who didn't matter. And Melissa? She kept smoothing things over. Kept telling me it would get better. But better never came. Instead, I sat in my own house at a table I bought, listening to a boy I clothed and fed laugh about how irrelevant I was. That's when something shifted. Not a loud snap, just a slow, steady unraveling. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I didn't tell Melissa what I heard. I just started paying attention. To the way my name was never used. To the way my efforts were never acknowledged. To the way Melissa never defended me, even when she should have. I started counting the receipts. The dentist visits. The braces. The field trip fees. The cleats for football. The new backpack. The laptop he swore he needed. All of it me. And in return, nothing. Not even decency. And I began to wonder, if I really was just a tenant, then why was I paying the full rent? I tried to hold the line. Tried to tell myself that fatherhood wasn't about blood, but about endurance. About staying when it was easier to leave. I told myself the contempt would fade. That if I swallowed my pride long enough, if I kept showing up, kept paying, kept giving without asking for anything in return, the kids would one day look at me and see something more than a man in their way. They didn't. And the longer I stayed, the clearer it became that I wasn't seen at all. The little things started adding up. Eye contact that never held. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. When they talked about family, I wasn't included. When they mentioned their father, they called him Dad with a reverence I couldn't buy, even if I bankrolled their entire lives. Dinner was my least favorite ritual. I cooked every night. I made sure the food was ready by 6. Melissa would drift in, tired from her nursing shifts, and offer a grateful smile. Jake and Lily would chatter about their day. Haley would eat quickly and disappear. Ryan would show up late, if at all. And when he did come, he'd sit there with his fork in one hand and his phone in the other, picking at the food like he was doing me a favor. One night, after I spent 2 hours grilling steaks, he sat down, looked at his plate, then looked at Melissa and asked, "Is this safe to eat?" I mean, he made it. He didn't even bother to smirk. Melissa laughed. That forced, awkward laugh people use when they don't know which side they're supposed to be on. "Ryan, don't be rude," she said. But there was no weight to it. No defense. No correction. Just a glance in my direction, as if to ask me to let it go again. So I did. I always did. Jake and Lily started noticing. One night after dinner, Lily asked, "Why doesn't Ryan listen to you?" Jake chimed in, "Yeah, if we said that stuff, we'd get grounded." I didn't have an answer. I just told them it was complicated. That Ryan was older. That things were different. But I knew the truth. They weren't different. They were broken. I just hadn't admitted it yet. I kept trying. I bought concert tickets for Ryan when his favorite band came to town. He went with Haley. I wasn't invited. I tried to help him study for his SATs. He refused, said he didn't need me hovering. Once, I offered to help with his college applications. He laughed. I'm not putting your name anywhere on those. Melissa said he was just trying to be independent, that he didn't want to rely on anyone. But that was a lie. He relied on me constantly, just never emotionally. Never with recognition. He'd leave his car keys on the counter, and I'd take it in for an oil change. Never a thank you. He'd text Melissa when his shoes wore out. I'd drive across town, buy the pair he wanted, and leave them outside his door. Not a word. He once called me by name. Not Andrew. Not stepdad. Just, hey. That was the closest he ever got to acknowledging me. Still, I held on, because holding on was all I had left. Until the night I heard him on the phone again. He didn't know I was in the hallway. He never cared who was listening. He still thinks he runs this place, he said. Like he owns us or something. He's just a temporary tenant. That word again, tenant. Like I was leasing space in a life that didn't belong to me. And this time it wasn't a knife. It was a match. I didn't get angry. Anger would have been easy. Anger would have let me slam a door or throw a plate or confront Melissa and demand she pick a side. Instead, I sat in the garage that night, lights off, just listening to the house hum. I thought about the mortgage. My name. The cars in the driveway, my name. The health insurance, the utilities, the school forms, the dentist appointments, the braces still being paid off in monthly installments, my name, every single one. And then I thought about Ryan's face. That smirk. That word. Temporary. It echoed in the dark like a curse. I was not temporary. I was not a ghost. I was the man who had held this family together while everyone else picked and chose when they wanted to show up. And if they saw me as temporary, maybe it was time I started acting like it. That night, I made a decision. I didn't tell Melissa. I didn't write a letter. I didn't warn anyone. I just started gathering the proof. I opened the filing cabinet in the bedroom and pulled out the house deed. My name only. Melissa had signed a waiver when we married. Her credit wasn't good enough to co-sign. I had said it didn't matter back then. That we were in it together. I found the bank statements. The tuition savings accounts, Jake and Lily's, funded by me. Haley had a small account. Ryan had nothing. Melissa had said Greg was contributing to a separate account for Ryan. I never asked. I assumed he was. He wasn't. I checked the insurance documents, the car titles, the utilities, all mine. I sat there, surrounded by paper, and realized something I hadn't dared to think before. They needed me, every one of them, and not for love, not for guidance, for infrastructure. I was the electricity in their walls, the heat in their water, the foundation beneath their feet. They didn't see it, but they stood on me every day, and I had let them. I went to bed that night and stared at the ceiling. Melissa lay beside me, reading, the lamplight soft on her face. She looked peaceful, content, as if she couldn't feel the quiet fury rising next to her. I turned off the light and closed my eyes. And in that darkness, I made a silent promise. They wanted to treat me like a tenant? Fine. But when tenants leave, they take their name off the lease. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam a door. I didn't leave a note on the fridge or disappear in the night. I didn't have to. Men like me don't leave in anger. We leave in silence. In spreadsheets. In title transfers and closed accounts. We disappear by subtraction, one bill at a time. I started with the house. It was always mine, though I never reminded anyone. Not when we moved in. Not when we painted the walls. Not when we hung our wedding photo in the hallway. Melissa used to say, "This is our house." And I let her, because I believed in shared futures. But there was no our on the mortgage. No we on the deed. Just my name, bold, solitary, final. I called the real estate agent on a Wednesday. "I want to list the house," I said. Quietly. No signs yet. He asked why. I told him I didn't want to explain it to anyone until it was already done. I expected questions. He didn't ask. Maybe he'd heard that tone before. Next, I rented a small one-bedroom closer to work. Nothing special, just clean walls, working appliances, peace. A place where nobody rolled their eyes when I walked in. A place where silence wasn't loaded with contempt. I didn't say anything to Melissa. Not yet. I needed the distance first. Not just physical, I needed emotional escape velocity. I stopped refilling the grocery list. I stopped changing the oil in Ryan's car. I let the backyard grow wild. I let the house become the thing they thought it already was, something they controlled. A kingdom I no longer ruled. A week later, the for sale sign went up. Melissa saw it first. She'd come back from work, hands full of groceries, keys dangling from her wrist. She pulled into the driveway and froze. The sign was plain, white, unassuming, but the weight of it could have cracked concrete. She came inside slowly. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee. I didn't flinch. "Andrew," she said, "what is that sign doing in our yard?" I looked up. "The house is for sale." She blinked, the groceries still in her hands. "What are you talking about?" I nodded toward the window. "Everything's in my name. You knew that. I'm selling it." The silence that followed felt like a stopped heart. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You didn't even talk to me." "No," I said, "because talking never changed anything in this house." That night, Ryan stood on the porch, staring at the sign like it had insulted him personally. Haley asked if we were moving. Jake and Lily just watched me with wide, confused eyes. I didn't explain. They didn't deserve the explanation. A week passed. Melissa tried to reason. "We can work through this," she said. "It's just tension. Ryan's a teenager. He's going through things. Don't burn everything down over this." I laughed, low and bitter. "You mean don't take away the house your son says I don't belong in?" She didn't answer. The sale moved fast. The market was hot. We had multiple offers within days. Melissa didn't sign anything. She couldn't. It was never hers to claim. One night, Ryan asked, "What happens when we move? Where are we going?" I shrugged. "That's up to your mom. And your dad." He scoffed. "Greg? He can't even pay his own rent." "Then maybe he shouldn't have raised you to spit on the man who could." The silence hit harder than anything else I could have said. The house closed within a month. Melissa cried when we got the final offer. "What about the kids? What about stability?" I looked her in the eye. "You let your son call me a stranger. Now he gets to live among strangers." Haley and Ryan moved in with Greg. Into a 2-bedroom rental with mismatched furniture and water-stained ceilings. No backyard. No space. No more luxury disguised as love. Melissa followed them, not physically but emotionally. I saw it in the way her eyes dimmed when she spoke to me. The way she started sitting on the edge of the bed. The way she stopped asking what I wanted for dinner. She had chosen her loyalty long ago. I was only now accepting it. Jake and Lily stayed with me. I packed their things carefully. Their clothes. Their books. The photo albums no one else thought to preserve. I told Melissa they needed stability. She didn't argue. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she didn't want to fight a war she'd already lost. The night before the final move, I stood in the living room of the house I had paid for, staring at the blank walls. So many meals. So many birthdays. So many quiet, crushing moments. Melissa stood beside me. She didn't say anything. I finally did. "You chose silence. Every time they disrespected me. Every time they ignored me. You smoothed it over. You asked me to be patient. But you never asked them to change." She looked away. "I carried this family," I said. "You let me. And when I asked for something as small as respect, you gave me excuses." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did." I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling fan spin. The walls were stripped bare. The home was gone. All that remained was the shell, and the debt that no one but me had paid. The next morning, I handed the keys to the new owner. He smiled, shook my hand, talked about how excited his family was to move in. I nodded, said nothing. As I drove away, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel triumph. I felt absence. Not the absence of the house, but the absence of illusion. They'd never seen me. They'd only used me. Now they would learn what it meant to lose the man who held their world together. 6 months. That's how long it's been since I left the house I bought, paid for, and was erased inside. The old life is over now. The echoes are gone. The routines too. Jake and Lily live with me full-time. Our place is small. 2 bedrooms, a crooked fence, a narrow kitchen that smells like coffee grounds and burnt toast. But it's ours. There's peace in the quiet now. No slammed doors. No sideways glances. No whispered insults from rooms I still had to pay to heat. It's amazing what silence becomes when it isn't soaked in contempt. The mornings are slower. Jake sets the table without being asked. Lily hums while brushing her hair. We talk about school, about nothing, about the little things that used to get swallowed in the noise of a household that never made room for us. They ask about Melissa sometimes. I don't lie. She made her choice, I tell them. She chose to believe that loving someone meant letting them hurt others. They're too young to understand all of it, but they understand enough. They remember how Ryan spoke to me, how Haley looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. They remember Melissa's silences, how she let things slide, how she'd say, "Don't make this worse," as if asking for respect was a disruption, not a right. Jake still asks, quietly, if it was his fault somehow. I kneel every time and say the same thing. You never did anything wrong. You saw it. That's all. He nods. But I can see the questions haven't left him. Children learn by watching. And for years, he watched his stepbrother treat me like furniture. Watched his stepmother say nothing. Watched me stay anyway. And he learned that love is something you give even when it's never returned. I'm trying to unteach that now. One evening, Lily found an old photo album in a moving box. Pictures from the first year we moved in with Melissa. Beach trips. A blurry Christmas morning. Ryan scowling in the background, always at the edge of the frame. She pointed to one and said, "Was that when we were a family?" I stared at it for a long time. "No," I said. "That was when I thought we were." The truth is, we were never a family. We were a hierarchy built on silence and usefulness. And when my usefulness ran out, when I started asking for reciprocity, I became expendable. But I let it happen. That's the hardest part to admit. I told myself I was being strong, that I was holding things together. But what I was really doing was enabling. I was teaching Melissa and her kids that they could take from me endlessly, and I would never stop giving. I was showing them that my patience was infinite, that my boundaries were suggestions. And then, one day, I told the truth with my actions. No more. The fallout was worse than I expected. Ryan dropped out of college 3 months after moving in with Greg. No money, no structure, no motivation. I heard through someone at the high school that he works part-time stocking shelves at a grocery store. Greg still bounces between temp jobs. They moved twice already, each time to a smaller place. Haley took it differently. She reached out once. She emailed me, just a single line. "I didn't understand how much you did. I do now. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Not out of anger, but because apologies that arrive after comfort is gone are just echoes. Melissa hasn't called. Not once. She texts Jake and Lily occasionally. Birthdays, holidays, but they don't ask to visit her. Not anymore. They don't cry when she forgets things. They just shrug. They're learning something brutal, something I wish they didn't have to, that some people love you only when it's convenient. The hardest night came about a month ago. Jake had just finished a school project. He was proud, glowing. I told him we'd go out for burgers to celebrate. He smiled, then stopped, his face clouding. He said, "Would Ryan have ever said he was proud of me?" The question knocked the breath from my lungs. I didn't know how to answer, not because I didn't have one, but because I knew the truth would hurt more than silence. "No," I said. He never looked past himself. Jake nodded as if he'd expected it. We ate in silence that night, but not the kind I used to fear. This was the silence of understanding, of something painful settling into place. And in that stillness, I made him a promise. You will never be invisible again. That's the lesson. Not just for them, but for me. I was invisible in that house. Not because they couldn't see me, but because I let them. I told myself love was sacrifice. That fatherhood meant disappearing behind duty. That being a man in a fractured family meant enduring disrespect in the name of peace. But peace without dignity is just surrender. And love without boundaries is just servitude. They used me until I stopped letting them. And when I finally said enough, they called me cruel. But I wasn't cruel. I was clear. I was clear when I sold the house. Clear when I took my name off their futures. Clear when I stopped fixing their messes and started living my own truth. And now they know. They know what it looks like to live without the man who made their comfort possible. Without the one who got up early and stayed up late. Without the man who paid and planned and forgave and swallowed his pride until it poisoned him. Now they get to see the world without the scaffolding I held in place. Now they have to build something on their own. Maybe they'll learn. Maybe they won't. But I've already learned enough for all of us. So here's my question. For you, for anyone still reading this, when does patience become complicity? When does forgiveness become self-erasure? And when someone calls you a stranger in your own home, how long do you stay before you prove them right? Was I wrong? Or was I just the first one in that house to finally tell the truth?